Hello, everyone. It is Tiffany of Clarity, Confidence, Courage, Women's Empowerment, and I am so excited to bring you this amazing woman, Sanasi Amos. She is here to talk about sex education and not just any type of sex education, adult sex education. Yes, this lady is amazing, and I'm going to have her introduce herself and really tell us more about what she does.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hello,
Thank you.
Sanasi.
My name is Sanasi Amos for full, and I am a sex educator from Nigeria. And then I focus on not just sex education, sex researches. I do a lot of research about sex. Then I do sex writing all of the information I have gotten from research. And then with my knowledge as a sex educator, I try to simplify it and putting it on blog post, so that just about anybody can access it. And I do not just give the conventional or the traditional sex education. I focus on pleasure, I focus on consent, I focus on sexual compatibility, and I also focus about sexual decision making, because I feel all of these aspects is what makes us human. Sex makes us human, but then all of these components is what makes sex really pleasurable to us as grown human.
I love it. And I love, like you said, talking about sex from a standpoint of pleasure, not just, hey, we're here to have babies. But this idea that we are sexual beings, it is part of our natural organic aura, it is part of our bodies, it's part of ourselves. So tell us, Sanasi, what made you want to get into this field? How did you get here?
Okay, so I live in Nigeria, and then the population of Nigeria as at today, March 1st, 2021, is 208 million. And then that is a lot of people. It simply means we are having sex so often, but then nobody talks about it. And even when we hear about sex, when we hear people talk about sex, because sex education here is mostly carried out by doctors, we hear about the medical or the health aspect, which is not bad, but I think that shouldn't be the focus of sex. They talk more about getting tested for STIs, they talk more about getting your vaccines, which is really good, but nobody talks about pleasure.
Mm.
And with the population, you think a lot of people are having sex just to reproduce, and there is much more than that to sex. So I wanted to change it. My first degree was in demography and social statistics. I had a major in sexual reproductive health, but it was the usual: get tested for STI, get your vaccination done, family planning, space your children. But I needed to just change it to make it really fun. I think people get tired when they hear the same thing over and over again, and I wanted to
Yes.
change that. So I got a certification in sexology, and then started talking about pleasure, consent, and then decision making skills, sexual compatibility, why you should be with this partner, and then how you can navigate sex when life crisis occurs. I think we don't talk about that. So when maybe a life crisis occur, like cancer, or somebody had a major surgery, it becomes an issue. Even childbirth, there are some times that childbirth just disrupts sex, and nobody talks about all of these things. So I needed to do that. And then one of the major characteristics of a life affirming sex educator, you must constantly develop yourself. So I didn't just stop at getting a certification. When the time comes, or when I am chanced to, I take other courses online. I can take courses on mismatched libido to focus more on why this happens. And it really gets interesting because you learn something new always.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And you and I have talked before, and we really talked about just so much. I mean, it was so much in our first conversation. I was like, oh my gosh,
Yes,
I
it
gotta have you
was.
on. We talked about, like you said, in Nigeria, and the concept of sex, like the perception of sex in Nigeria, just as far as the mainstream perception. And then when you started to put yourself out there and talking about it more, you realized more and more people were coming to you wanting that knowledge. Can you talk a little bit about, I think you said the groups that you started to form because people were so interested in this topic?
I started on Instagram, but Instagram has this restriction about things you post online about sex. And then I had my account disabled in 2019 at 17K followers. And it was a lot to take in. So I just took a break. And then when I got back, I just decided maybe use the Twitter platform. Who knows, it might be better. And then I noticed a lot of people were giving the tweets attention. I just sincerely was on that platform to tweet. And then most times when I'm taking a course, I needed to remember something, I just tweet about it. Or if I needed to understand an example given in the course, I tweet using my own example, and then it resonated with a lot of people. And I noticed, okay, this is getting a lot of attention. You should form something from it. And then I started a girls' night out group. It was just for ladies alone, so they would feel comfortable in that space, talking and sharing a lot of things about sex, because most times women don't get pleasure, and the pleasure gap is a whole lot. I think it's 57% the difference. And it's a whole lot to take in. So I started something for them. And I noticed a lot of them they felt comfortable because the space was safe enough. They noticed we were all women, and then I could talk freely. And over time, we used to meet on Saturdays because I dissolved the group. I now have a group to involve everybody. We met every Saturday. I made slides and then do basic research for some things so the class will not just be boring. And I noticed a lot of them were learning. And after classes, I get emails. Oh, thank you for talking about this topic today. It meant a lot to me. I learned a lot. And I noticed people actually need information. If you make it available, they would come after you, and they needed information. The guest night out group was not planned. I just did it, something to just help people. Then I started a workshop about female genital mutilation. That is another issue we face, not just in Africa, in the world. Currently, there are 200 million girls circumcised. And it's a lot because the clitoris for the sole purpose of the clitoris is pleasure. And imagine 200 million people without that. It's not even about the pleasure part, the mental part of it, the toll it takes on them, feeling like they are not enough, they are not complete. And then sometimes childbirths become really tedious, even periods become so stressful because they stitch up the whole vagina and then leave a little hole for pee or menstrual blood fluid to come out. So it's a whole lot to teach them. Okay, fine, you don't have a clitoris, you cannot change what has happened.
Yes.
I let them understand if there is a certain there are 4 types of female genital mutilation presently, and then type 4 and 3 can be reversible because they stitch up the whole vagina. So in the hospital, they try to open it back up again. So I try to tell them, okay, there is a solution. You can actually go to the hospital and then get this thing opened up so that period will not be as painful as before. Childbirth will not be so tedious. And for the main purpose of the group was to teach them you can still achieve pleasure without the clitoris. And then I started that. The first one I had, there were 175 women in attendance, and I am planning another one this March. And when I just made a tweet about it, I made a tweet about it in March. A lady reached out and I told her, a lady posted about it. She's going through this. She doesn't enjoy sex. So I told her to reach out to me. I could supply her with materials and then give her a free coaching session. And in about 15 minutes, I had over 50 DMs talking about the issue. So there are actually people out there with issues, but they need the right person to help them solve it. And then I am all for that, helping people solve their sexual issues, because everybody deserves pleasure. I mean, everybody does.
Whew, Sanasi, that was a lot. And you know, you and I connected because we both, like you said, have a background in public health. That was my background when I first started in my professional life. So I do know quite a bit about female mutilation, as far as genitalia mutilation, and done a lot of work around that in my previous life. So I understand like this idea of how important it is that the work that you're doing to get out there to let women know there is hope, and that you, like you said, you are still a woman, you are still beautiful, you are still enough, and you still deserve pleasure. Now, I want to kind of segue into pleasure and talk more about that, because I think that this concept of a woman, just the word pleasure, I feel like people have almost like connected the word pleasure to sin or sinful. Like if it's pleasurable, it's a sin. And I'm not saying in general, but I do think, and I think it's worldwide, I don't think it's just one region, where women having specifically pleasure is kind of almost seen as a little bit taboo, you know, because we have been kind of put in these boxes that there are certain roles that we are supposed to play. And when you talk about a woman just having sex for pleasure, not having children, not reproducing, not for any other reason, it starts to go down this very weird hallway where people start to get very uncomfortable. So let's go down that hallway and let's talk about that more, because you and I talked about, you know, we talked about history and the history of women leaders having pleasure. So can we talk a little bit more about that on this video?
Okay, so I started teaching with history because I got to realize that was one way people learned faster. I mean, people want to learn about what happened in the past, how interesting it gets, and the stories I tell are usually fascinating because a lot of people would not expect a woman at that time to be having pleasure. But reverse is the case. They believed, oh, women have been stereotyped since day one, and then they believe women should not have pleasure, and then it's because we are in the 21st century, it's changing. And I tell them, no, it's the opposite. When you go back to history, you notice women had pleasure. It was something that wasn't even weird at that time. It was very normal for women to have pleasure, and they get interested, they want to listen more. And then I started using history to teach women about pleasure, especially Black women, because I think there is this, women are generally placed in a box, but you see Black women, you would have to, I think they're placed in a box and then covered in it. So you have to unbox them from the top of the box downward. So it's a whole lot. And one way to connect with them is history, telling them, look, this didn't happen to your ancestor. There is no way you should settle for less. And it works a lot of time. And then I tell them, pleasure necessarily doesn't mean you have to wait for a man to come. You can have pleasure by yourself.
Yes.
And when you tell them that, they sit back and ask you, is it not a sin? And I tell them this whole concept of sin, of you should not do this because you are a lady or a woman, started just to control the mind. I mean, if you go back in time and then check it, I saw somebody saying masturbation is bad. And then I think a lot of people just decided, okay, we are saying this because I feel like it's bad. When you are checking for lumps in your breast, you are self-massaging. Masturbation is simply self-massage. So how is that bad in any way?
Right.
And a lot of people think they become so addicted. They do this thing because it feels good a lot of time. And I tell them that is why you should do it mindfully. You know, this is why I am doing it. And then this is why it's working for me. And when you talk about tell a lot of women to check out themselves in front of the mirror now, they will feel so uncomfortable doing it. They just feel like I am not enough. And then it all falls back to the condition of the mind. A lot of times in coaching session, when you see women, is because they feel society has formed this for us. We cannot go back to it. It's not just about sexual pleasure. It's about societal standards set for women. And then I tell them, you know what? Who is even society in the first place? Like, who formed the society?
Yes.
There is no reason why you should focus on society.
Yes.
Focus on yourself instead. So I had a class last week and we spoke about, it was a 4-week long class. We spoke about shame. I really wanted them to understand the concept of shame and then differentiating shame from guilt. And I told them in the class before we started, I have been researching about shame, and then I read about Benny Brown's work. She's a shame expert of 25 years now. And then she said joy is the less processed emotion. And when she said that word, I resonated so well, because a lot of women, when they feel pleasure, they begin to question themselves. Am I doing this right? Am I supposed to feel this way? Because you have been conditioned not to feel good about yourself. And then you just feel like you are doing something so bad. Like if anybody else knows you are feeling this way, they would stigmatize you. So you do not just do it.
Yes.
And then I went ahead in the class and told them that is shame. Shame is simply thinking the world will judge you because you did something bad, or you did something that is not up to societal standard. Why guilt is your conscience telling you you have done this thing bad. So I asked them, how do you personally feel? Do you feel you did something bad, or you actually did something bad, or you are feeling bad because of standards society has set for you? Yes. And then in the class, almost everybody was beginning to realize, oh, I have been shameful all along. I have been shameful all along. And I told them one way to battle shame is finding out the root cause. What is the root cause? Most times, societal standards. And then who in the first place sets this rule? Learn to ask questions. Somebody is saying you should not enjoy sex as a woman. Your duty as a wife is just to enjoy sex. Sorry, not to enjoy sex. It's just to give your husband sex. Ask them, who sets the rule? Why should I do that? Exactly. Learn to ask questions. And then that is the first step to unlearning shame, asking questions, and then realizing this is shame I'm feeling. And then about pleasure, I tell a lot of women, I think the main reason why we have overpopulation, especially in Nigeria, I tell them a lot of time, is because women have not learned to have sex for pleasure. They just do it to bear children. And then you see a woman feeling so bad if she doesn't have a child at a point in life, because they tell you, this is the normal tradition here. Once you get married, by the second year, you should have a child. And then you have more children because they think one child is not enough. What if something happens to the one child? Like I said, asking questions. Who made the rule? Why should I have a child when I am not ready to? Having a child is not just something you just pop out children because you want to prove somebody wrong. Right. You need to be financially ready, emotionally ready, a lot of things. And then you ask questions. Why do you think I should have children at a point where I am not even ready? And you even notice that person telling you to do this thing has been conditioned by shame also. Yes. And they never realize. And that is the thing about shame. You never realize I am being shameful till you become so conscious of your pattern. Learning your shame pattern is so important. And then when you find out, you question authority that sets all of these rules. You find out that they were also conditioned by shame. And that is what I make women understand in history classes I take sometimes. I let them understand, look, women of the past, they broke all stereotypes that society sets for women. I went ahead to tell them of Queen Amina that became a queen in Zauzau, current day Zaria. Nobody will expect a lady to lead a huge army and a city, but she did that because who made that rule in the first place? I mean, who made the rule? And she broke that stereotype by asking. There were no answers, and then she went ahead, she led. Queen Cleopatra, like, who made the rule for a lady not to lead? There were no answers, and then even up until this day, we know her as one of the most powerful women that walked on the surface of earth.
Yes.
So I tell them, like, your ancestors questioned stereotype. Learn to do the same. Oh, you are a woman, you shouldn't do this. Ask them, why shouldn't I?
Why? And I love, like, this gets me so riled up because I love the study of history, especially when it comes to women. And we talked about this idea of when you have a powerful group and they want to maintain their power, they will use any and every effort to oppress the other group. And when you talk about men and women, I'm definitely not trying to put down men or anything, but when you look at history and you look at men, it's like, how can we continue to have control over women? How can we do this? The best thing to do, like you said, is teach them to be shameful of their bodies, teach them to be shameful of their sexuality, teach them that their only job is to be a wife and a mother and have children. And then if you take that group and continue to tell them that over and over and over again, like you said, they will become conditioned to the point eventually you won't have to tell them, they will tell themselves. And they will pass it to their girl children, and their girl children will pass it to their girl children. And that's any country, any person, place, thing in the world that you've ever seen where one group is oppressing the other. It starts there. It is a very old method. And I think that even in today's society, even the women that I coach one-on-one, you see it in families where mothers have told, daughters things like, don't speak too loud, or, don't, you want to put on a dress, girls don't run, or girls don't play with the boys out there. That's for boys, this is for girls, or, whatever it may be. And like you said, put them in this box and make them feel shameful. And so I think it's fascinating that you have connected shame to sexuality and power and control when it comes to women in our society. And I love how you connect it to history. And you're right. When you go way, way, way back in history, you see so many women in a lot of different cultures that were powerful, very powerful, and they were not ashamed. And so I love how you connect that to your group.
Thank you. So I just make them realize, most times in my coaching session, the first thing I make a client realize, shame is a tool used by the oppressor. Do not fall for it. And then when you are falling for it, the consequence of shame is not even on the oppressor, it's on your own part. You self-destruct yourself, your capabilities. And then I make them realize, in the end, you lose almost everything. You lose your dignity as a person, you lose your esteem, and then you find yourself going down this deep, dark, endless hole. So do not conform to shame. That is one way. One thing I make them realize when they are in for pleasure coaching sessions. And then so far, I think it's important to make them understand, oh, this thing I have learned so far is because I learned it from social conditioning. I must be this person, I must be that person. Who made the rule? Learn to always ask questions like, who made that rule for you to be this person? What if you do not want to become that person? Who made the rules? So learn to ask questions. And then most times when you ask questions, you realize that people setting those rules, they are also conditioned. They were conditioned. Sometimes they learned it also. So I make them understand, ask questions. And a lot of times when you talk about pleasure, I think it's the same issue, shame. When you talk about pleasure, a lot of women are not so comfortable talking about it or engaging you about the topic. But then they read it and then they send you an email so that they would not be known. They do not want their friends or family seeing them replying your messages or replying the post you made online. And when I see that, I tell them, thank you. Well, what is the issue? Why can't you actively engage? And a lot of times you hear things like, I'm not comfortable doing that. I tell them, take your time. Again, shame is a tool used by the oppressor. I think a lot of people who have joined my session will always remember this statement. I make it almost every day to make them remember this is what you're passing through. Do not let your mind fall for this conditioning. And you see women sending me back emails. I am actually shameful. I need help. How do I go about it? And I make them realize the first step to walking out of shame is realizing you are shameful, and then realizing it's a tool by the oppressor. And you should not give in. Ask questions. Who made the rules in the first place? Why do you have to follow all of these rules? And I give them example, like I said, with historic example, so that they realize, oh, I am not the first person doing it. And then women who tried this, they were called witches, they were called prostitutes, but that doesn't kill anybody, right?
Right.
You can call me a witch. What is the worst that can happen? I would be here. You just like wasted your voice, your energy. So I make them realize, look, people who have done it, they were criticized, and it's fine. Like, everybody is entitled to their opinion, but do not let it get to you.
Absolutely. And have you noticed from your experience, I know I've seen it in my own work when I coach women, that when you liberate a woman's mind and you almost like have her come to that realization that I can I can have pleasure for myself, and I don't have to look outside of myself to get it from someone else. And not just physical sexual pleasure, but the pleasure of knowing I am enough, the pleasure of my own confidence, my own self-love. Talk to me about that experience, that women who have come to you and have come to that almost like an enlightenment. How is that for you?
So a lot of times when people ask me what you do, I tell them sex coaching and sex education. They think I just sit in a room with the person, right, and talk to the person about sex. And then I tell them it's not always that way, because a lot of times sex affects our decision making skills in life, and then our esteem, not just in sex. And I made them understand, not just with women, I give them examples. You see a man with premature ejaculation, you just notice he has an esteem problem, not just in his sex life. Maybe you're probably just joking, and then you say something, just a little thing, you see them flaring up, anger issue shows up. And then I have researched on this topic, how our sexual abilities affect our esteem. And I see that with a lot of plus size women, right? When they come in for sessions, they have this low esteem, feeling they are not enough. So they settle for anybody that comes for them, because, I mean, people condemn them a lot of times. And it affects not just sex, it affects their whole life. You see them being shy to speak out to the opposite sex or to a potential partner. They just feel like they are not enough. So they hold back. You don't see them making the first move. And it becomes like a habit. Even when they need opportunities, they don't speak up. You don't see them in limelight, because they feel, I should not be here, I am not good enough. And when this happens, when I see them in sessions, I tell them, the first thing when a client comes in, especially a plus size woman, I make them realize, okay, this thing is not just affecting your sex life, it's affecting every area of your life. And I make them write down how they feel generally about life. And a lot of times the common factor is, I should not be exposed, I should not be in limelight, because people like me do not deserve that. And I ask them, why do you think this shouldn't happen this way? Why shouldn't you be in the limelight? Because you are not up to a person's is or society's stereotype of, you must be slim, you must have a flat tummy, you must not have chubby cheeks, have a bony cheek. Is that why you feel that way? They say sometimes they feel that way, then they feel okay, I should succumb to this mood. And they probably meet a potential partner who just makes them happy for a moment. And then maybe during sex, you hear things like, you are too fat. You don't deserve pleasure. And then it doesn't just affect sex, it just affects the way they relate to every other person after that.
Yeah.
You find out that the experience is so different. So I tell them a lot of times, sex doesn't just affect your sex life, it affects everything you do as a person, because it's a part of life, I mean, and we do not pay enough attention to it. So I tell them a lot of times, just take your sex life a little bit serious, and you notice the changes in every other aspect of your life. And I think everybody who follows me on social media know this is the message I pass a lot of time. Like, do not let somebody tell you it's just sex. It will affect you. You also find out, I will give another example. Women who are expecting children, right? Maybe they are trying to conceive parents. They are trying to conceive children. You notice a lot of times they avoid places where they see children. They avoid going for maybe picking up their nephews or nieces from school, or their wards from school. They avoid it a lot of times. And then someone would just think it's sex, but it isn't. Like, it affects your relationship with people. And a lot of times they avoid family gatherings, even going out with friends, because they think someone might just pick up on them and tell them, look, you have been trying since, where's the child? And a lot of times when somebody tells them this, they become so depressed that they begin to isolate themselves from the real world. They do not want to hear what every other person has to say.
Right.
That is one thing I make them realize in my sessions. It's not just sex. It's just look at it from the angle of, I am dealing with every aspect of my life, because every aspect of your life is connected, right? So I let them understand, if you deal with this aspect, you will see changes in this aspect, And then so far, that is one of the major reasons why I started this. I wanted holistic change, not just in their sex life, all around, how they relate to people, how they make decisions, how they ask questions, and then challenge stereotypes, basically.
Oh, Sanasi, I could talk to you all day about sex. I love this. I know that advocating for women and women's sexual rights can be definitely challenging. What do you specifically do in your personal life when times get tough and you're just drained because, you've been working at this for so long? What do you do for yourself to keep yourself going?
Okay, so a lot of times when people are dealing with failure, they do not talk about it because they think when you do, you are weak. Societal stereotypes, like, who made that rule? Who made the rule that talking about your challenges mean you are weak? I used to be like that. Like, I never wanted anybody to see my vulnerable side.
Yes.
Because I feel like that is the first thing they will remember when next I see me. But I mean, I don't care. It's a part of life. We all go through that type of challenge. We go through challenges almost all of the time, and then nobody talks about it. So I realized, people who follow me on social media know I talk about my failures a lot of times. Last year I was applying for jobs and I kept getting rejection, and for every rejection I get, I tweet about it. Not just, I did not want people to come and sympathize with me or say, oh, I am sorry this is happening. But then I want to show people that I failed too. It's normal. It's a normal process of life. You feel bad. And I mean, it's not the end of the world. You keep trying. And as at last year, I had a total of, by the end of the year, 175 rejections. And I documented everything along the line.
Yeah.
Because I wanted people to realize, look, I keep failing. The number of times I fail is much more than the number of times I win. But you get to remember the part where I win, because a lot of times people do not know what goes on behind the win.
Yes.
They do not know, so they just think, okay, she won, she probably deserved it, she got it that way. So I started documenting my rejection process to make people understand, look, before I got this major win, I had a major win last year, which was winning the Sex Journalist Award of the Year for UK Sexual Health Week. And then they saw it, they were all happy. But I was so glad that a lot of them resonated with the fact that Sana had 175 rejections before this moment.
Yes.
And then they knew, okay, if she did it, I mean, I can do it too. And I do this because I think people who follow me should realize, okay, because I did not get this once doesn't mean I should not keep trying. And sometimes when the failure is, there are different levels of failure, right? When the failure is like a lot to take in, I just shut everything out, process the emotion, speak to trusted friends, family, and then they speak to me. I mean, we are humans, we cannot do anything alone. We are social, we are made to socialize with everybody, and COVID taught us that, right?
Yes.
For the few weeks of lockdown, like everybody was so angry. Then we got to a stage of being sad. Some people fell into depression because social interaction was not so much. So once there is a big fail like that or challenge, I just shut everything out. Cry, because crying is normal. I mean, I am human. And then I reach out to friends, socialize with them, ask them what can be done. And then most importantly, I try to learn from my failure. It's not just failing and then standing up, trying again. Learn about the whole process. Why did I fail at this stage? What happened? So basically, that is what I do.
Wow. And I think you're so right. I think that, when you're, especially an entrepreneur, and you're building your business, or you're building your group, or you're building your organization, and people just see the highlights, right? They see the wins, but they don't know how much work you have put in and how many things didn't work out and got rejected. So thank you so much for sharing that. And on this last question, before I have you give us your handles and how to contact you, what is one last message that you want to leave to the audience as far as women and motivating them when they are just kind of in a space where they're like, I don't know what's happening in my life. What's a motivating message that you can leave with them?
So the first step to change is realizing you need help. You need a change in your life. So realizing that, I think, coming to a point where you ask yourself that question, how do I get help? You should be happy, because not everybody gets to that stage. Some people do not even realize that. And then when you're at that stage, get help. Not necessarily from professionals, because not everybody can afford professionals, I mean. But then have a space, a safe space where you can talk about issues like this. There are resources online that you can get help from. I think that is one of the benefits of the internet. And always remember, a lot of times they shame people for going through certain challenges. But then we are humans. Life will be so boring if everything went perfectly. It will be so boring. So just to realize, anybody trying to shame is just an oppressor, I mean. And then sometimes they are not, because they have been conditioned to behave that way.
Yes.
Just realize shame is a tool. If you are trying to conceive and then it's not coming true, people who question you, immediately they ask question, where is the child? Ask them why they are asking.
Yeah.
That way they realize, oh, I have done something I am not supposed to do. And then you notice sometimes they might not do it intentionally. They have just been conditioned to be nosy into people's businesses. And then when you do that, they call themselves back to check. And a reasonable person would apologize. I am sorry I did this. I did not know it will get to you. So first is first, realize you need a change in your life. Second of all, get help. And then thirdly, always remember, shame is a tool used by the oppressor. So when you are going through something and you speak up, people shame you for it. Remember, it's just the way society has conditioned people to shame others because they feel more powerful. It's just a game of the mind. And when you put them in check, that is by asking questions and challenging stereotype, you realize realize a lot of times that people have just been conditioned to shame others, and sometimes they don't even know it.
Yes. Oh, this was so powerful, Sanasi. Like I said, I could talk to you all day long, but but this would be a very long video. But so thank you for that. Thank you for this interview. I want to ask you lastly, how can people get in touch with you? How can they follow you? I know I follow you on LinkedIn and that's how we connected. But tell us, how can we get in touch with you and all your handles?
Okay, I am across all social media platforms, basically Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and it's the same thing at the Sanasi, TheSansi, and on LinkedIn is Sanasi Amos, Sanesi, then Amos, Amos.
Awesome. And I'm going to get all of your information and definitely put it in the comments below. So everyone who is watching, if you want to connect with Sanasi, you definitely can. I am connected with her on LinkedIn and following her other social media. So definitely connect with her. I love the fact that we are in literally 2 different countries across a huge ocean, and yet we have the technology to connect and discuss these issues. And I think it's so important for women to continue to connect like this all over the world, because that is where true change is where we as women come together and say, look, we are having this issue. Let's talk about it. Let's get it out there, because we want all women to understand that their sexuality is natural. It is a natural part of themselves. Everyone,
thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you
absolutely.
so much.
I love it. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And as always, this is Tiffany of Clarity, Confidence, Courage, Women's Empowerment, and my special guest, Sanasi Amos. Bye, everyone.
Bye.